Hello and welcome back to Kelly and Phoebe Go to the Movies, and we're still doing it at home over Zoom. So, hello, Kelly.
Hi,
And
Phoebe.
today we're talking about The Killing Floor, which is a story about unionized labor and an interracial union in during Chicago race riots in 1919, I believe. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, first, it was originally made for PBS, and so it does have a little bit of that like not high budget kind of feel. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I thought the content was so powerful. I didn't even care that it seemed like a low budget film. Um, my my initial thought was if you are not into documentaries, but you want a really clear-eyed intro to how people in power prop up racist systems and why systemic racism still persists today, I thought this is perfect. This is like a masterclass
Yeah.
in why do people perpetuate racist systems. And so if you're not into documentaries but still want kind of that context, this is a great film for that. And it's maybe a little on the nose if you already kind of understand that and do a lot of thinking about that. But I think if you're watching the Black Lives Matter movement right now and you're trying to understand why they're saying that people in power perpetuate racist systems, I mean, this you can see it very clearly in this. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's while it's set in 1919, it feels familiar. It
It
feels
feels
very of the
very
moment.
relevant. Yeah,
hmm And
very much
so
so.
so that's part of what I thought was incredible about it was just this very clear-eyed, just on the mark way of approaching that subject in a more narrative, not documentary film
Yeah.
structure.
Hmm.
And the meat packing companies had this vested interest in turning the workforce against each other. And it
Yes.
was all about union busting and their profits. And they really didn't care about the cost in human lives. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that, we're still seeing with a lot of corporations these days. So it made me a little sad that this was set 100 years ago and it still
And
feels
yeah, it
familiar,
feels
like super familiar,
yeah.
which was really sad. And I think also what I thought was really interesting about this too is um, I I've done a lot of reading about that era. It's a That era in Chicago is personally interesting to me. My grandmother was a Polish immigrant in
Oh
Chicago.
wow. And that's a big part of this movie as well, is from the Polish people's perspective in the meatpacking industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I grew up with her stories talking about how so many companies were trying to turn the different immigrant groups on each other. And she's shared so many stories with me about how she was spit on as a Polish immigrant and things like
Hmm.
that. And that, like, that very real anti immigrant feeling she grew
Yeah.
up around. And I think really she passed it on to her children and grandchildren as, you can't let this keep happening to other people. And so it was very interesting to watch a film set in that period, knowing her perspective of all of this. Like she was a child
Right.
while this was happening, but I remember hearing just all of this. The powers that be were trying to turn immigrants on different immigrants and all the
Yeah.
immigrants against the Black
And that,
population.
yeah, that's brought up in the movie through one of the characters who mentions, when he got there as an Irish immigrant, I think, they were told to hate the Polish, or the whoever came after them, and then they were told to hate the Bohemians, and they were told to hate the Polish, and now they're being told to hate the African Americans who are coming up from the South. And yeah, I think that there was a lot. I mean, it was really interesting to be seeing this through the perspective of Frank Custer, who is somebody who goes up to the North in order to get more money, be able to help his family. And when they get to the North, it's like a paradise to he and his friend, because they're like, oh my God, it's so easy to get a job. There are black people thriving in the city, and it seems like a really wonderful thing to him at first. And then he's faced with this kind of inner conflict between both his blackness and joining the union, and they are in conflict with one another because honestly most of the black workers see it as kind of a scam. Like, they're like, you're gonna ask us to pay like a large chunk of our wages in order to not be protected by you once things start to fall apart. We're gonna be the ones getting thrown under the bus. And yeah, so I thought that having it through his perspective was fantastic, because we got to see, really the important inner conflict that is also kind of externalized through the Chicago race riots that are going on at the same time.
Yeah, and you see how that already kind of tentative mistrust is capitalized on by the meatpacking companies.
Yes.
And it's just like, this tension is already here, so let's light a match, and that's good for us. Which is the part that feels familiar, right? As we hear all this rhetoric of immigrants are taking people's jobs, and that hierarchy that's
and even
still
with the
coming
protests,
down.
even with the protests going on now, it's like, we hear a lot about like these fires that are happening that could be like from agitators, they could be from people who are protesting. Who knows? The point is that it's tearing apart like the working class and the people who are demanding a change.
Right, and the very explicit, like, these people have a vested interest in looking out for each other. The union would do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the union sees these flyers that are saying no blacks in our union, and the union leaders are going, we didn't do this. But right. Of course, there's already mistrust, and so
the match is already lit.
Yeah, 100%. So that I just because I've grown up personally hearing stories about Chicago at that time, it was really interesting to watch that play out, and to have, to feel like I've been handed that history as the granddaughter of a Polish immigrant, but to see how that played out for all of the racial groups. And I thought it was very even-handed. There was no bad guy other than the meat packing plant, right? Like, they weren't trying to, that's what I thought was beautiful about it, right? Was that the union, everybody who should have joined the union, everyone who could, everyone in the working class was treated with this equal-handedness, right? The Poles were not bad, the Irish were not bad. Like, nobody was really.
And even Frank Custer's kind of nemesis in it, who's another black man who refuses to join the union and kind of, convinces other black workers that, like, this is not for us. This is totally a white man's game. Even he is given complete, like, a character and respect, and, like, you totally see his perspective at the same time.
There are a few times that you feel very sympathetic to him and almost turn on Frank in the movie, because you're like, come on, Frank, like, you got to understand his point of view. So that was the other thing that I really liked about this film. It was very even-handed and showed how everybody was harmed by the racist system that was being propped up, which I thought felt very relevant right now as we're facing our current political moment. Is, racism doesn't just hurt the victim, people of color. It's holding back, white people as well. And that's something that we don't talk about enough. And I thought
police brutality, same thing. Yeah, it's, it's like, of course it is heavily impacting the black community to a much higher degree. But at the same time, if that's going on, that means that it's affecting everyone. That's a really bad thing for us as a whole society, that police have no accountability and, are able to kill with no repercussions.
Right. And I thought that this film does a great job of like when you're fighting each other, the powers that be get to do whatever they want
Yeah.
without question. And that's, and that's the part that felt really to me like something that still felt super relevant was, as long as we're looking at each other like this and not looking up at the structures that, that are enforcing these systems, that we're not doing our jobs, any of us, right, to dismantle
Yeah.
it. And I thought that was very clear in the film as, they start fighting each other and nobody's going like, wait, doesn't the meatpacking plant have a vested interest in making us fight each other and busting up this union?
Right. And it's easier to distrust the people who you see around you all the time probably than these, these people who are kind of up in their glass houses or their castle in the sky or whatever. I just wanted to mention like the ending. I don't think this is really going to give anything away, but I think there was a really bittersweet ending, and I thought it was very well deserved for the rest of the movie. I thought it did a really good job of, you know, kind of pulling it all together, but also saying like we've still got work to do. And it's just it's a moment of like Frank tries to convince a room full of people to that we all need respect. They need us, we need them, and we need to be a cohesive unit in order to really like get the meat packing plants to listen to us. And he just gets one person who comes over and shakes his hand, and I just thought that was such a beautiful moment of like sometimes that's how organizing works. That's how it that's how it starts. You have to start with one person sometimes.
Oh yeah, 100%. I've worked as a community organizer before, and that's how it feels, right? As you work and you work and you work and you get one person, and you've got to see that as a win, and
Yeah.
but that's how it works, that's how it works. So
Right. Kind
yeah.
of a bittersweet note to end on. So, Kelly, what would you rate this out of 5 stars?
I think I would say 4 out of 5. I thought it was very well done. I mean, the production value, of course, it's a fairly low budget film. So the production value is like, not out of this world or anything, but I thought the storyline and the acting and the analysis that comes through in the film was really well done. And I really appreciated it for what it was. I will say it's not for the faint of heart. If you, there are a lot of scenes inside a slaughterhouse.
That's very true. Yeah.
Like, it did remind me why I'm vegan because
It's really disgusting. Like the amount of blood and just carcasses that you see. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but even that felt to me kind of necessary, right? As like it
Totally.
really gave you context to they're grateful for this job, and I think there are still
Yeah.
people
It
working
was
in
almost a visual
meatpacking plants.
metaphor.
Yeah, and so I think that's but even within that, like I liked the scene where one of the um I can't remember the character's name. One of the Polish immigrants comes up to Frank and says, like, I can see you want to move up, so I'm going to help you. And I'm going to, while you're sweeping the floor behind me, because that's the only job they're willing to give you, let me show you how to do this butchering. So that, and this is the kind of knife you need to get. And this is the kind of, practice you need to do so that you can, move up. And I just thought that
Was that Ben Bremer? Was he
was
the
it?
one who?
Yeah.
And he was an interesting character too because he was almost presented in the beginning as like, watch out for this guy. Like he seemed a little scary, and then as you get to know him more, as Frank gets to know him more, it's like, oh, you see like the both sides of him, and really the loyalty that he has towards the men who have agreed to join the union as well.
Yeah, and how he just really stands by Frank, and like even leading
Yeah.
him into that group of Polish immigrants and being like, you guys, you need to listen because we need to stop fighting each other. And um Yeah, so that's what I really liked about this film is it showed these big structural issues, but it also nuanced it with, but also we're all human beings within these groups, and we all can do things where we are with what power we have. And to me, that was just such a nice message to hear right now, is like, you're looking at this big systemic issue going like, how do we do this? How do we dismantle this? And it's easy to feel really helpless, I think. But I liked the nuance of this, is like anybody can be a problem, anybody can be part of the solution. So, and sometimes you're both. And that's what I liked
Yeah.
about this film, is sometimes you are both part of the problem and part of the solution.
And sometimes neither option is a good option or a bad option, really. Like, especially for Frank with choosing to join the union, it's like you can argue from either side. And yeah, it didn't cast any judgment from the perspective of the movie on anyone's choices, really. Except maybe the meatpacking industry.
Yeah. I mean, and that level of nuance was really refreshing, I thought. And so that's why I said 4 out of 5, because I just thought that message of everybody's part of the problem, everybody's part of the solution. You're in it sometimes, you're not at other times. And you've got to do with that what you can. And that's not a big takeaway for like a lot of movies. There are clear good guys and clear bad guys, right? Because you're trying to create a narrative.
Yeah.
And I just really, really liked the nuance in this movie. Like I really, really liked it.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I think 4 out of 5, and really just docking a point for production, I guess. Which I don't blame them. It's a PBS movie, but yeah, I think that it handled historical drama and conflict so well in this movie. And I'm kind of I get really sick of the historical dramas that I see that are very much just like Americans good, Nazis bad, or that kind of narrative over and over of like we're the heroes, or just having like heroes versus villains, almost like it's a Star Wars movie instead of like a historical, piece about something that's naturally complicated and convoluted because it's historical, and no matter whose perspective you're getting it from, it's going to sound completely different. So I think this did a really, really good job of pulling it from someone's perspective who is kind of like by nature in a conflicted and nuanced situation. And yeah, I thought it did a fantastic job, and I really loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Well, I'm glad that's another one we agree on.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. Yeah, well, thank you for doing this, Phoebe. It's
Thank
always good to
you.
see you and talk movies again.
Yeah. And we'll see you guys next time that we talk.